After Arsenal beat Bolton 5-1, everyone was talking about the performance of nwaneri. However, another Arsenal youngster, being Myles Lewis-Skelly, also had an excellent game. And in this video, we're going to look and break down his overall performance and why he can be a valuable asset to Arsenal this season. So let's get into it. Now, even though nwaneri is definitely the youngster everyone is talking about, I think it is fair that Myles Lewis-Skelly also gets some of the same limelight. He's a player that has also been called up to the main team this season alongside nwaneri, and he did play on his debut after picking up a yellow card before he came on against Man City, and I expect him to play a lot more after his convincing Bolton performance, I felt like. Now, the first thing I will always say about Myles Lewis-Skelly, and you do get this with nwaneri as well, is that they are so good at using their stature and the height that they have to be able to keep the ball. They may not be the tallest, but they're very strong at keeping the player behind them and almost operate in that sort of Gabriel Jesus system where he is very good at keeping the ball away from the defender. I also think it is very clear that Lewis-Skelly likes dribbling and likes keeping the ball in a certain way. He usually stands up to the ball and keeps his back towards the defender, and often is very good to dribble or get himself into a situation where he can actually get the ball in these areas where he can be effective. Now, he's another player that also likes switching the play a lot, but also is very good at passing it down his lines which he wants. First, he was getting into elevated positions against Bolton and causing them problems where Calafiori is making his runs. His positional awareness was often brilliant, and I felt like he was getting into them pockets and causing some frustrations for the other team. Do they go towards him or do they stand off him in case he gets the ball? At the start, he was often trying to fill the game out, and you see a lot of times that he would come inside and just help the ball filter across the defence. He often was a very good positional player, and when Calafiori overlapped him, he came inside, or vice versa, and seemed very fluid at being a proper winger and what exactly we want in them positions. And something that was interesting to me is that when he was going into them elevated central areas, a little bit more of a midfielder alongside Rice, when Rice would come the other side, he would often try to pass the ball out to the winger at all times. Finally, we've got a left back that the first thing he thinks about is always trying to get Sterling, who our left winger in this game, in a 1v1 situation. However, a lot of the times where he couldn't really get the ball through, he'd keep the ball, which we saw nwaneri do a lot when they're very smart on the ball, and often shield the ball away from the defenders so he can clear it. And the perfect example of his shielding did come at the start of the second half, where the ball is bounced out by a striker who is taller and bigger than him, and he does so well to just head the ball down, keep the ball under pressure. He makes them do challenges where he keeps the ball, and they even get 2 to 3 men on him where he still is able to get away from them and end up drawing a foul in a great position. This is something that I really like to see from youngsters. Not only does it show brilliant awareness to keep the ball and make sure you don't lose it, but it's also that resilience, that power that he has, even though he isn't the tallest and biggest player, to be able to actually use his dribbling prowess to actually keep the ball in this situation. Ends up getting a smart foul, and we move on from there. I also think for a left back that predominantly was a midfielder, and I think a lot of people talk about his passing, I do think his defensive level in the first half looked very impressive. He seems to have quite a good awareness, or at least acknowledgement or anticipation of when things are going to happen. Not only I think this comes from a positional standpoint when he had to work off Calafiori, I think when he did have to do a one-on-one defending piece, he often did very well. Now, sometimes when they're running at him with pace, I feel like it's not the best situation for him, but a ball over the top, we see he did a great header to win it away. But more importantly, it's when Arsenal are trying to win the ball back in the other half, and he's aggressive, trying to get his foot in there and gets there before the other players, being helpful with the team. And it's something you do see Calafiori do a lot, having that aggressive nature to him, but he's smart when he decides to do it. And this is good. The fact he can defend in a 1v1 situation and in settled possession, but also come into the middle and be a brilliant passer or even keep things ticking along, shows the amount of adaptation, the amount of variety he has in his game. Now, despite all of these great things, I think the main thing that really stands out with Myles Lewis-Skelly is his individual quality on the ball. He is so good clearly as a passer from deep, and he does give me a lot of similarities to someone like Jorginho with how he does through balls and how he keeps the ball in his possession. Now, all game he was really trying to get the ball over to Sterling. He's not someone that is really going to switch the play or do them really long passes, but he is going to try and focus on his winger on his side, which does make that side stronger. And I do think in the first half the left side was very strong. As soon as he was getting into space early on in the game, he was already looking for Sterling with an over the top through ball here, which obviously didn't come off, but it's a great attempt. And specifically, I think this is really good for a player like Sterling also, because Sterling starts from a very deep position, but he's also a very quick player and has great timing on his run. Something that has definitely been highlighted here, where he can get Sterling in behind. I think if you had Arsenal players who else can play in left wing, it may be a little bit of a struggle to do that all the time. But that was on the start of the game, game where you can definitely see the intention was there. And along as the game went on, he kept trying to find Sterling. Even when he couldn't, like we said, he went back and ends up recycling the play. But the whole time he was trying to work with Sterling to end up getting Sterling in a 1v1 or even be able to get a ball in. There was some times which we spoke about in the Nwaneri analyst where Nwaneri would actually switch the ball to the left side, and this would give Arsenal a little bit of a quick counter attack to go and attack Bolton on the left side. This is when Lewis-Skelly would work with Sterling in a 2v1, even overlapping him or underlapping him to try and give him some options if he didn't feel like the one-on-one was worthy. Sometimes when there was a double man up on him, he did overlap, and I do think his crossing, his pass selection is really good for a level now. I think it will get better the more he does it, but the fact that he's willing to back up his winger, and you would hope that when Arsenal get a left centre mid that wants to work in them or places operating near, I could definitely think Lewis-Skelly could be an option for that play. And of course, the main bit that everyone's talking about with Lewis-Skelly is the goal that we end up scoring for our second one. Lewis-Skelly gets in an elevated position. They don't really press him. Of course, if you're going to play better opponents, they will obviously try and keep tight to this guy because they know this can happen. But yet again, Sterling starts at such a deep position where at this point it doesn't almost seem that he can actually get the through ball through. The Bolton line is poor. Rice is dragging one of them out of position, so it is just an absolute mess. And the ball, the weight of it is perfect. How he sees it is fair enough. It goes through 3 defenders and they don't get there in time, but it's almost the perfect weight on it where it stops exactly when Sterling can get to there and get one touch on the ball and cross it in for Nwaneri to score. But obviously Sterling does brilliantly to get that in as well. If Myles Lewis-Skelly can keep this sort of level of passing up, and I saw it a few times where he got close in this game to doing these passes, then I do think Arsenal will see him as a viable option for that position. That is something we haven't necessarily seen Timber or Calafiori do too much. Calafiori is a much more dribbling player who will carry the ball up himself, and Timber will do them passes, but mostly he actually will do the overlaps for Martinelli as well and get into them attacking positions, which you've seen recently. But Timber hasn't really been doing them passes as much, and I don't think sometimes because of his left foot he's not necessarily liking them angles, even though I know that he has that brilliant turning radius that we all love. But I think Myles Skelly is a little bit in between these players. He reminds me of a lot of Jorginho. I see a lot of Zinchenko vibes about him with how he's on the ball, and if he can get anywhere of defensive level as players like Timber, Ben White or Calafiori, I do think he is a viable option to play relative this season. You've also got Kivior there, who I think had a great game as well in centre back, so there is definitely options for that role. But I do think Myles Lewis-Skelly's passing range, defensive positioning and intelligence on the ball make him a very, very smart and exciting option for Arsenal going forward. And I do think maybe because of his stature you could get at him, but you look at his stats in this game going forward: 5 passes into the final third, he tried to do 2 dribbles, he made 2 out of 3 accurate long balls, and overall made 55 of his 61 passes overall. So he's clearly very influential on the ball and can definitely help Arsenal against them teams playing a low block. Overall, I think Myles Lewis-Skelly also has incredible potential, and unfortunately we have too many left backs at the club, so you might not see much of him more than we want, but he definitely can still be viable this season. And I think him and Nwaneri have saved Arsenal loads of money by having these 2 incredible players come through the academy. Let me know what you think in the comments about Myles Lewis-Skelly, and let me know who you want me to talk about next. If you like this video, please go and watch my video about Nwaneri, and if not, I'll see you in the next one.